Excellent. So I think without further ado, because we do have a tight hour here, we'd love to start with the webinar. We're very happy to host Cytovia Therapeutics, the CEO, Daniel Teper. I want to thank everyone for participating today. And also, I know that there's a lot going on in the world, so we appreciate you giving us the time as every week we're trying to add value here at MSQ Ventures. This is Mark Estigarribia. I'm the Senior Partner and Managing Director of MSQ. I work very closely with Echo and the team, and also Dr. Sean Shi, who's on our venture partner as well. He's on. Just to give you a little bit of background on everyone that's hosting tonight. We have Dr. Sean Shi. He's our venture partner. He's got 15 plus years of industry operating and investment experience in the healthcare sector, private equity, venture capital, M&A. He was a previously founding member of a healthcare fund, adjunct professor at the National School of Development at Peking University. I'll have him introduce himself in a little bit. And then also with us, our special guest, the CEO of Cytovia Therapeutics, Dr. Teper, principal founder. He's a CEO. He was the CEO and founder of Immune Pharmaceuticals, which was listed on NASDAQ. He also served as New York-based managing partner, head of North America at BioNest Partners, where he advised companies on corporate strategy and business development. He started his career in Novartis in Basel, and then in US, where he held management responsibilities in sales and marketing, head of cardiovascular new product development. He held general management positions in Europe at GlaxoSmithKline and Sanofi. So a little bit about, I just wanted to say hi, Daniel. Thank you for joining us. If you want to say a couple of words, please. I think you're on mute.
Yeah, good evening, Mark, and good morning, China. It's a pleasure to be with you today and to introduce Cytovia Therapeutics. We're a company not even a year old, and we've had an exciting, first year with multiple partnerships. We focus on natural killer cells and the application in cancer. We'll talk more about it in a few minutes. And obviously, there's a challenging healthcare situation in the world and a challenging, economic situation in the world as well. But we're very resilient entrepreneurs, and we'll do the best of the situation and make the company strong in coming months and years.
Great, thank you. Dr. Sean Shi, if you can give a self-introduction from my brief one, would appreciate it. And maybe a couple of words if you want to share.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. And hi, Daniel, and thanks for this time. Actually, like Mark said, I was venture partner at MSQ. Actually, I was a clinical doctor about 15 years ago, and in the last 15 years, I was with the healthcare sector, doing the financing and also doing some private equity investment. And so in the past 15 years, I did a lot of investment in China in the healthcare sector, from the biopharmaceutical and medical devices and also healthcare services. And now today, I'm very happy to talk with Daniel and Mark about the topic, the immunocell therapy. And I also tell you a little bit about the non-COVID outbreak. Maybe you will very care about it. Actually, in China now, it's okay now. The total existing confirmed patients about 5,000 people, and the situation is getting better and better. But now we still are concerned about the the patients from the outside, from the other countries. So God bless you. God bless everyone in the rest of the world. I think the situation is not good, but we have some experience, like the government to take a lot of control. We have a lot of regulations, but I think it's good. So this is about the situation about non-COVID, and about today's topic. I think Daniel will talk more about the therapy. I think for the immunotherapy actually in China, it develops very fast in the past 5 years. Like about 5 years ago, the immunotherapy in China, they stopped and paused. But in the past 5 years, they grows a lot, and the policies are more open than before. Many products are in the progress of the clinical trials, and many they just got the IND, and many of the startup companies in this area, they got a lot of financing and raised a lot of money. And it's very luckily just in this month, the Fosun Kite, their product just got the NDA in China. So it's good news. Yeah, this is a very brief introduction.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Shaanxi. So let me start by introducing a little bit about Cytovia, and maybe Daniel, you can add to that, please, and we can go into a couple of questions before the presentation. So Cytovia Therapeutics is dedicated to the development of transformational cancer immunotherapies, addressing several of the most challenging unmet medical needs, including the prevention of cancer, relapse, and metastasis. Cytovia focuses on natural killer NK cell biology and applies precision medicine tools to develop the right therapy for the right patient at the right stage of the disease. Daniel, if you can add to that, we'll love to start with a couple of questions as well on the back of your introduction of Cytovia, please.
Sure. So, Cytovia is positioned around what we believe is, game-changing technology in 2020 and years to come. And I think, as was mentioned in the introduction, previously, cell therapy and gene therapy, actually both of them, in the last few years have become mainstream. I think China, in addition to the United States and Europe, has shown a lot of innovation in that field. We've placed the bar quite high, and we've partnered with some of the best international institutions, and we believe that we have the right technologies to address very severe diseases with unmet needs, and we'll be very focused to finance the development of those technology and bring new products to patients and make sure that those therapies are accessible to a larger number of patients. And I'll explain why we believe that natural killer cells are particularly appropriate to make cell therapy or cell therapy directed treatments more affordable and more accessible to patients, including outside of the hospital.
Great, thank you. So we're very excited, Daniel, with the interest in China as well. There's a lot of interested investors and strategics. With regards to your science and just clinical related here, what is your vision for the cell therapy space, and notably your position in the space, landscape, competition, breakthroughs?
We believe that the science is becoming much more accessible. The major difference between natural killer cells and other previous tier therapies, including T cell engagers and CAR Ts, is that it appears to be much better tolerated, and it may be possible to administer the treatment outside of the hospital, which obviously would open it to many more patients and maybe at earlier stages of of the disease. We also very focused in terms of cell therapy in leveraging the breakthrough of induced pluripotent stem cells, which were the Nobel Prize of Medicine in 2012. Professor Yamanaka from Kyoto, where essentially he demonstrated that you can undifferentiate an adult cell, blood cell, or fibroblast into a stem cell, an undifferentiated stem cell. And from there, you can redifferentiate again in neurons, but also in immune cells, including natural killer cells. So I'll give more color in a few minutes, but we've been able to partner with one of the best teams in the US to develop NK cells from stem cells. And that basically means that you can produce identical cells at the industrial level in millions and billions, and therefore, the consistency, but also the cost will go down significantly.
Great. So I guess you kind of touched upon elaborating the advantages of CAR NK therapy over CAR T therapy. Can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah,
those advantages?
that's correct. I mean, CAR T therapy, including pioneer companies like Kite and Juno, have used what's called autologous T cells. Essentially, you have to take the cells from the patients, engineer them, and re-inject it, which is expensive, complicated, time-consuming. May take up to 2 weeks until the patient gets the proper cells. And in addition to that, unfortunately, although some patients were cured, uncurable patients were cured, and that's the big breakthrough. Other patients got very significant side effects, such as cytokine release syndrome, which can lead to death. Actually, we're talking about COVID-19. Many of the deaths due to COVID-19 are an overreaction of the immune system. So with the CAR T cells, sometimes you have an overreaction of the immune system, which is not controllable. And you also have something called graft versus host disease, where essentially the body rejects foreign modified cells. So you don't see that so far with NK cells from a safety standpoint. And also you can manufacture them in large quantity from a universal source. And so that's why we think that it will make cell therapy accessible to many more patients at a lower cost and with more safety.
Great. One more science question before we get a little personal here, because we definitely want to learn more about the man behind the science. But with regards to the multifunctional NK cell engager platform, it seems very interesting. Curious about the hurdles during the development. Any specific targets you're excited about?
Well, I think the technology of bispecific and not trispecific antibodies is mastered by many. So I would say just 3 to 5 years ago, it was difficult to manufacture, but now many companies can do it. So the challenge is to select the right targets. What we want to do is we want, with the same molecule, to engage the natural killer cells, target the tumor antigen, and regulate the microenvironment of the tumor. And why do we want to do that? Is because we want to overcome all the challenges that those molecules may have getting to the tumor and actually being effective, including in solid tumors. So that's why we're quite happy and proud that last week we licensed and partnered with the Hebrew University of Jerusalem, Professor Mendelbaum, on NKp46. NKp46 is one of the major engager to activate NK cells. So that's a differentiation. And I'll talk in my presentation of which target antigen, both in hematology and in solid tumors, we've selected, and then how we regulate the microenvironment of the tumor. So we have a technology that is now scalable at the industrial level, not just by us, but by many other companies. And we have differentiation in the fact that I believe at this point in time, we're one of two, at least two known companies in the world that are focusing on NKp46 as a main target to activate the NK cell.
Great, great. One more question before we get a little soften up a bit, but you know, the topic globally at hand right now. So the natural killer cells play a role in both cancer, virally infected cells. Do you have any plans to apply your technology to treating patients with SARS, COVID-2, COVID-19?
So the role of NK cells in regulating tumors or targeting tumors as well as virally infected cells has been demonstrated by several major key opinion leaders in the last 20 years, including Professor Mandelbaum in Jerusalem, but also Professor Louis Lanier at the University of California, San Francisco, and there are publications in Nature and in Science in major journals. It hasn't resulted in treatments actually administered to patients to date, but it's interesting that one of our friendly competitors in the United States has announced that they're starting a clinical trial where they will administer non-engineered natural killer cells to patients at risk, at severe risk of SARS-CoV-2 or for the treatment. So we don't know. I mean, there's a strong rationale, and that was even in the Wall Street Journal and on national TV. There's a strong rationale to do it. We don't know what the results are going to be. In addition to that, we're exploring with Professor Mandelbaum the possibility of having a bispecific antibody with one arm that would target the NK cell and the other arm that would target the virus and block the virus. So I think it's very early days, but we are looking to be among the pioneer biotech companies that are looking not only at repurposing existing treatment, but innovating for the treatments of tomorrow.
Got it. Excellent. Thank you, Daniel. Your experience at GSK and Sanofi, Novartis, these are global pharma firms, and now you're driving Cytovia Therapeutics. What is your the motivation and your drive for China?
I think not just myself, but the team, we've recognized already for several years that, China is not about just APIs and cheap generics, but China is about innovation and very high quality science, and that it's really an exchange, between the West and China, and that, we can contribute in the United States to development of novel products in China, but so can, Chinese scientists and Chinese companies, contribute to innovation that can be eventually commercialized and brought to patients in the US and in Europe. And we can ignore, billions of people on the planet. And I think for too long, China is being considered as an outsider. And we're really looking at China being a major player in the world, not just economically, but also in science and medicine.
And we thank you for that. Obviously, we share that vision. Hopefully, we have this borderless world where we can share this technology and be innovative and really help people, not just in developed countries, but around the world, including China. So thank you for sharing your innovation here on our platform and offering it to find a partner in China to collaborate. So I think without further ado, Daniel, if you want to share your screen, and present some slides for the next 15 or so minutes. Looking forward to that, and then we can get into Q&A.
Well, thank you. So, Cytovia is about harnessing the power of natural killer cells to defeat cancer, and we've also mentioned, viral infections. That became more prominent, unfortunately in the recent, months and weeks. But if we can contribute to, fighting, SARS-CoV-2, COVID-19, will definitely make our small, contribution. Cytovia, has assembled, we haven't discovered anything in Cytovia because obviously in 9 months, that's barely the time that you need, for a human baby. So clearly, we haven't invented all of the science, but I think based on our experience, we've had access to some of the best, specialists in the world. So that's why we formed, scientific partnership with the New York, Stem Cell Foundation Research Institute. They're the ones who develop, differentiate NK cells from stem cells and then manufacture them in large quantities. With the University of California, San Francisco on gene editing. I mentioned earlier that Professor Lanier was the head of immunology at UCSF, is also a pioneer on NK cells. And then more recently, just last week, in fact, we partnered with the Hebrew University of Jerusalem and Professor Mendelbaum, who is the head of the Lattenberg Center for Immunology and Cancer Research. And in those 3 institutions, you have opinion leaders that are widely published in world-renowned journals such as Nature, Cell, and Science. 2 major technologies are, CAR NK cells. It's basically the engineered, NK cells, and NK cell engager multi-specific antibodies. So I'll focus first on the CAR NK cells. The CAR T companies such as Kite and Juno have emerged from, in the last 5 years, from startup companies to companies that were sold. Kite to Gilead for $12 billion and Juno to Celgene for $9 billion. But if you look at the last 1 to 2 years, you have many more CAR T cell companies, but their valuation is much less, and there seems to be less appetite for CAR Ts, and that's related to toxicity and also to the high cost burden. Those therapies often are hundreds of thousands of dollars. So recent data has shown that CAR NK could address some of the limitations of CAR T cells, and Dr. Rezvani from MD Anderson, published the first clinical study in the New England Journal of Medicine, recently, and shortly around the availability of that data, Takeda, partnered that technology and will now take it further in clinical development. At the same time, at the American Society of Hematology in December, Fate Therapeutics, which we are considering as the leading company in NK natural killer cells, presented clinical data that was very well regarded and helped their market cap double to 2.3, $2.4 billion, obviously before the market correction. So we think that the science is there, the clinical validation is there, and that NK cells will be expanded to more patients and will be expanded not only to hematological malignancies but also to solid tumors. So now is really the time to enter the field of NK cells. One of the US KOL interviewed during the American Society of Hematology said that CAR NKs, and particularly iPSCs, so CAR NKs derived from stem cells, may well be the next Tesla of cell therapy. So this is a perfect timing, because you have the initial validation, but you don't have too many companies that are already established. Actually, if you're looking at this table, you can see that Cytovia is one of the youngest company, but is probably one of the best technology platform, and could quickly catch up with Takeda and with Spades, or in any case be among the 3 to 5 winners in the NK space. This is very detailed, but for people that ask me for the differentiation between NK cells derived from iPSCs versus other sources, you can see that two companies, Fate and Cytovia, are focusing on iPSCs. Actually, I should mention there's a third company called Cytovia Therapeutics, which received funding from Bayer, Fujifilm, and Versant Venture. Also focuses on iPSCs, and everybody else has technologies from which are good technologies, but don't have all the advantages of the iPSCs. So what are some of those advantages? iPSCs are scalable, they're homogeneous, and there's a manufacturing infrastructure that allows to do millions and even billions of identical products, even if you do gene editing on those cells, or if you do multiple gene editing. And why is that important? That's important because a partnership with UCSF, so University of California, San Francisco, is on the optimal gene editing of NK cells. We have the privilege of working with Dr. Justin Equim, who previously was at Memorial Sloan Kettering in New York. And the work that Dr. Equim is doing with us is defining the optimal loci for the CAR on the NK cells, as well as determining the best co-stimulatory domains as part of the CAR. So this is quite advanced engineering. This will lead to novel intellectual property, where Cytovia is the exclusive license, the exclusive option to license from UCSF, and therefore would create a strong differentiation not only today but in the future. So combining the gene editing platform from UCSF and the iPSC platform to New York Stem Cell Foundation puts us in a unique position to get the best products, again, not only today, but tomorrow. So what are the initial applications? We, so far, the CAR Ts have been applied mostly to hematological malignancies. There's a question whether CAR NK could be applied to also to solid tumors. So we have pre-selected two CAR NK programs. The first one is a CD38 CAR NK for multiple myeloma. There are CD38 CAR Ts and BCMA CAR Ts. There's much fewer CD38 CAR NK. CD38 is a proven target. It's overexpressed in multiple myeloma cells, and we have access to our own CD38 antibody and CAR. Now, our choice of solid tumor, I think, is particularly relevant for China. We intend to focus on GPC3 for hepatocellular carcinoma. as you know, about half of the cases of hepatocellular carcinoma in the world are in China. I think it's 300 to 350,000 cases. Liver cancer is the third cause of death, in cancer. And although there are progress in therapeutic options, there's still a significant need. The GPC3 antibodies by themselves have been disappointing, but there's encouraging results in CAR-Ts and T engager bispecific. And even in China, I think there's initial data with the GPC3 CAR-NK. So we again have access to proprietary GPC3 antibodies and CAR, and we intend to apply it to hepatocellular carcinoma and potentially to additional indications in the future. Business development and partnership are part of the DNA of the company. That's why we're always open to in-licensing and out-licensing and partnering and co-developing programs. Let me talk about the multifunctional NK engagers. So it's a space with a lot of room for innovators. Up to now was mostly T-cell engagers. The novel multifunctional NK cell engagers, which I think have been very well described in the paper in Cell in August 2019 by Dr. Vivier from Marseille, who's affiliated with Innate Pharma, the other company that has an NKp46 antibody, suggests that trispecific is most likely the best format. Our approach of the trispecific is to have one arm with NKp46, one arm with IL-15, which regulates the microenvironment, and one arm that targets the tumor antigen. Why we're so excited about NKp46 is clearly the data, even if it's not our data, it's the data from our competitor that you can see in Cell. But also, NKp46 is, unlike CD16, is expressed in infiltrating NK cells as well, which makes it particularly relevant for solid tumors. There's also literature that suggests that IL-15 is an essential cytokine for NK cells, and that it increases the cytotoxicity of NKp46 positive cells. That was described by Professor Miller from Minnesota and Professor Kelly Gary from City of Hope. If you look at companies that have NK engagers, they've already done at the preclinical stage, very rewarding, partnership with Sanofi for Innate Pharma, Merck, Genentech, Celgene, have been pioneers among the big pharma to co-develop NK engagers, bispecific or trispecific NK engagers. So if we look at how the next 2 years will what are we going to achieve in the next 2 years? Obviously, there's a lot of uncertainty in the last few weeks about how much research will be performed in the next few months, which labs are open completely, open 50%, 30% totally closed. But I think we'll adjust our business plan to the circumstances, but we're working very hard to fully validate the differentiation of NK cells from stem cells and the GMP manufacturing, to apply our initial CARs, the CD38 and the GPC3, so that we can have clinical candidates by the end of 2021 or beginning of 2022. And as far as the NK engager multi-specifics, we have a partner in Newton, Massachusetts, STC Biologics, that prides itself to be able to take constructs all the way to IND in 12 to 18 months. So although we're a young company, we believe that we have all the right partners to validate the science, validate the clinical relevance, but also make sure that we have GMP products. So who do we have on our team to execute this very ambitious program? I mentioned Dr. Equim at UCSF, who is one of the top experts on gene editing, Professor Mendelbaum in Jerusalem. Also on our board of directors, we're very proud to have Dr. Michael Friedman. He's a former acting commissioner of the US Food and Drug Administration. He was the head of the City of Hope Cancer Center. He also worked in industry and was the head of R&D at Pharmacia before it became Pfizer, and has been on the board of Celgene until the acquisition by Bristol Myers Squibb. We have experts in CMC, experts in clinical development, experts in business development and commercialization. So we have entrepreneurs. Dr. Udali, who is on our board, was the co-founder of Cytovia Therapeutics, which was funded by some of the best VCs in the US, but also in China. I believe that Sixth Dimension was one of the founder of Cytovia Therapeutics. Dr. Udali, worked at Merck, previously, and is also a biotech entrepreneur. So we believe we have a very strong team to execute an ambitious program. We believe it's a timely program, and we believe also that it's a program where we can contribute to the advancements of medicine in China, as well as we can benefit from partnership with Chinese scientists and Chinese companies to bring to the US and to Europe. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you so much for the presentation. So now we'll get into the Q&A. I can start off, and Dr. Shawnshee can add as well. So if you have any questions, please send them over if you're in the audience. What is your plan, Daniel, to fund these developments?
So clearly the plans have changed in the last few weeks. I would say early in the year, based on the enthusiasm around Fate Therapeutics, as well as the Takeda and the Anderson deal, our plan was to raise $50 to $75 million in a crossover round, and to take the company public as soon as appropriate, but maybe as early as the end of 2020 or the beginning of 2021. I think we have to revise those plans. The good news is that our burn rate is very reasonable. We didn't have to build infrastructure, and we have strong partnership and partnerships that are favorable in their terms. So we can operate with much less than that and achieve our milestones. So we want to nevertheless make sure that we're as well capitalized as possible in the next few months, including to allow us to seize opportunities of in-licensing more advanced programs in the CAR-NK space. And we anticipate that the larger financing rounds of 50 million or more may take place in the beginning of 2021, at a time where we'll have significantly more data, and then the opportunity to go public depends on the market, but maybe later in 21 or beginning of 22. But I also want to say that under the circumstances that the public markets may be closed, the opportunity to finance the company through alliances and partnership is great. We have differentiated science, different products, and we would love nothing more than partnering with Chinese companies and getting support from Chinese investors to advance, to continue to advance, fast in those, challenging times.
I have a question from the audience. What is the advantage of NK cell engager over ADCC enhanced monoclonal antibody?
There's a lot of technologies around antibodies, and every antibody construct is a little bit different. So you cannot say that NK engagers is the answer to everything, and T cell engager the answer to everything, or ADCC powered antibodies are the answer to different situations. So we believe that there's a differentiation, that NK cells, engaging NK cells has a particular effect, not only in hematological malignancies, but also in solid tumors. So if you take, for example, the case of hepatocellular carcinoma, there's an abundance of NK cells in the liver. So activating NK cells as the first line of defense in proximity to the tumor may be particularly effective versus just overpowering a monoclonal antibody.
Great. Two more questions from the audience, because I know Dr. Shawnshee has a couple of questions. But what do you think? How do you think Cytovia differentiates with Fate Therapeutics?
Well, I mean, clearly Fate Therapeutics has been in existence for several years, has much more resources financially. So clearly there's a disadvantage in terms of scale and immediate, finances available to support our program. So we want to catch up in that respect. But on the other hand, I think that we may be more agile. And I think we've demonstrated that with the multiple partnership that we have signed in less than a year with world-class, academic, institution. So I think, maybe we've learned also from China is that, when you don't have resources, you have to do the most with limited resources. But we also appreciate the determination of China industry, that when you have an opportunity, you have to go after that opportunity and fund it completely without hesitation, so that you can move it forward and you can take a leadership position. So, I think that culturally there's a good fit with, China investors and China partners. Is we know how to survive and progress with very little, but we also know how to deploy significant resources when they become available, so that we can take a leadership position.
Great. Another question here from the audience. Could you talk more on the different cell source of NKs in terms of iPSC versus cord blood NKs?
Sure. So, the cord blood NKs are probably the next best to the iPSC, and that's what's used by MD Anderson. I would say the two main differences, as far as we know at this point in time, is that is the stability of the capacity to expand the cells to millions and billions, and to do that in a totally homogeneous way, whether those cells are non-engineered cells, or they have simple editing, or they have multiple, editing. So I think that the blood cords NK cells are good for immediate application, And, I think I mentioned on one of the cells that we are considering it as an alternative to the iPSC in the short term for some of our programs. But in the next few years, and when I'm talking about the next few years, I'm talking, 1 to 3 years, not 10 or 20 years, I think iPSC will prove to be so superior of a technology that everybody will want to have that technology. So the fact that as a new company, we already have access to that technology and we're refining that technology, I think will give us a competitive advantage, if not in the next 12 months, but clearly in the next 24, 36 months.
There was a follow-up. Do you see any challenge in developing stem cell-based therapy?
Technical challenges, I think that, fate has demonstrated that they can do it, and they can do it GMP, and they can take it to the clinic. I think the New York Stem Cell, which is foundation, which is working not just with NK cells. I mean, the relationship with us is exclusive for NK cells, but they're working with different other teams on cells in diabetes and cells in ophthalmology and cells in neurology. I think their experience demonstrates that this is a technology that has come to a level of maturity so that it can become mainstream in medicine.
Dr. Shawn-Chi, please.
Yeah. Hi, thanks, Daniel. Actually, after your presentation, I got a very clear understanding of your business. And like your state, you have talked the landscape of the industry and the technology, and very well positioned about your companies. But as an investor, I will have two, I think, very important questions. One is, as an investor, we'll ask about the disadvantage of the product or the technology. And the second question I will ask is, what's your vision for China? Because we, MSQ, we have China and the US business. So we are looking for some, we can do some, provide some services. So are you looking for partnership with China Biotech? These two questions.
So to the first question, I think that the two weakness of the company is number one, the funding. We've moved very fast in building the team and accessing some of the best technology, but clearly today we don't have the funding at the level of the quality of the science that we have in the company, and the fact that there's a economic crisis, at least for the next few months, is an additional challenge that we have to face, and we have to be very smart and adapt and adjust our strategy and prioritize certain programs versus others, and clearly prioritize partnerships. We have the ambition to raise capital from venture funds and others, but we also believe that there's a good match between companies that are better funded, but maybe don't have access to the technology that we have. There's a good match to work together. Now, I would say I said all the admiration that we have, for China, and we've been saying for a couple of years that China is moving very, very fast, faster than what the West wants to recognize. But if you look at some of the short-term application of our technology, I believe that the application to hepatocellular carcinoma is very important for the China patients and for the China physicians. I think also the NKp46 NK engager, which is applicable to solid tumors, and solid tumors are very important in China. It is a strength that we have and that we would like to share with Chinese companies.
Okay, thanks. Actually, in China, we have a lot of opportunity. I don't know if you have heard about the news that in 2017, the Nanjing Legend, they licensed out the product technology to Johnson & Johnson, about $350 million US.
Yes.
Yeah, it's very exciting news. And when I look in many of the companies in China, so many people, they are focused on the CAR T, but for the CAR NK, it's kind of it's kind of new. And like you said, the CAR NK therapies has advantages, and and it's also in some early stage. They have a lot of innovations. Should be a lot of innovations in the future. But I'm still think it's a good it's a good way. It's good. It's a good opportunity.
Yeah, we believe that the partnerships that we could do in China are two-way partnerships. I believe that some of the research and technology we can implement using what we have in the CAR NK, because at least in the first generation, the CARs that are being used for CAR Ts are also used for CAR NK. I think in the future, in 2 to 3 years, with the editing that Dr. Iquim is developing at UCSF, you have a new generation of optimally designed CAR NKs, but in the short term, you can really leverage what has been developed for the CAR Ts and put them on NK cells.
Yeah, so comes my next question is about, you have already cut the partnership with UCSF and the NYSCF on a research collaboration, but are you looking for partnerships for additional research collaborations, or also think about partnerships on clinical development and commercializations?
No, absolutely. I mean, I think that we are interested in development and commercialization partnership for the China market, but we also are interested in taking some of the China technology and bring it to the US and to Europe. That's why I said it's a two-way street.
Okay.
And again, is when I was talking about the importance now for us in the next few months in this challenging environment to get support from the right investors is critical, because you cannot always repeat what we've done as a startup company to convince top institutions to trust the management. And in our world, money talks. So having the right investors to back us up, I think will give us access to additional programs, including some more advanced programs, which will increase logarithmically the value of the company.
Thank you.
Sorry, I was on mute. We have a question from the audience with regards to your clinical development plan. So what is the clinical development plan? When will Cytovia out-license a majority of drug candidates developed from the platform at early stage? Can you give some guidance there and timeline?
I think with the current pipeline that we have, we were probably about 2 years away, from the clinic. So we're talking about the first half of 2022. But I've also mentioned the fact that we have access to first generation products, particularly on the CAR NK side, that are more advanced, that maybe 6 months, from the clinic. But in order to finalize those partnerships, we really need to have the strong backing from venture investors or from corporate partners.
I think you mentioned in licensing. There's a question about any plans for in licensing.
Yes, so that's what I said. You know, we do have in licensing opportunities of CAR-NK programs which are very close to the clinic from the United States, and I think maybe we can partner with a Chinese company or get the backup from a China investor in order to finalize those transactions and have a global co-development, and that would contribute to strengthening Cytovia and also potentially strengthening the China company.
Great. So I think we're at the top of the hour, Daniel. Thank you for your for allowing us to host you. Want to thank our audience for plugging in, listening to the story. We at MSQ are very excited to be working with Cytovia Therapeutics. We did a lot of research together in terms of figuring out a strategic plan, and we're looking forward to the next step and making the introduction here to China. Thank you, Dr. Shaanxi, for joining as well and for contributing. Daniel, if you want to say a couple of closing words, Dr. Shaanxi, and then maybe Daniel can say some words.
Yeah, I have no question. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Daniel, any closing remarks?
No, I would say that we are excited to step up our relationship with China investors and with Chinese companies, and we believe that there are great synergies, and that together will bring better medicines for the many patients that need them.
Yeah, and we thank you for that, and we want to wish everyone safety, healthiness in this new paradigm, this new hurdle that we have in the world. And we want to thank companies like Cytovia for providing innovation. And we look forward to providing that to our Chinese audience. So thank you very much, everyone, for participating. Again, this is Mark Estigarribia here with Daniel Teper from Cytovia Therapeutics and Dr. Shaanxi. Good morning, have a great day, and good evening in the West.
Thank you, Mark.
That concludes our presentation.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye, Daniel. Bye, Dr. Shi.
Bye-bye.